I would like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you today from stolen Aboriginal land. Where I am is Woiwurrung country. I pay my respects to elders past and present who've resiliently kept alive culture and community through attempted dispossession and genocide. I also want to acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. My name is Lou, and I already mentioned that I'm on Woiwurrung land. It's where I was born, where I live and work, but my ancestors are from Germany, England, Ireland and France. Where I live isn't too far from Pound Bend, which is where the people who lived here were taken and allowed to live before being forced onto Corandurk. Woiwurrung is the language that is also spoken here, but I speak English. I have a great partner, a lovely kid, and I'm an information and support worker at Wire. And I also obviously run these information seminars. Wire, if you don't already know, is a support, information and referral service for women, gender diverse and non-binary people in the state of Victoria. We use this work, we offer that through web chat and a telephone support line. And when we're not in lockdown, we have a walk-in information centre where people can talk to us face-to-face as well. We use this work that we do with people who reach out to us to inform our programs. We have things like a separation and property legal clinic, seminars like the one we're doing today, as well as projects and advocacy work. In recent times, and by that I mean over more than 10 years, we've had a bit of a focus on economic issues, things including financial and economic abuse, inclusion by the financial sector for women and other marginalised groups, and employment. The work we do at Wire relies heavily on listening to and believing the experiences of the people that we support, particularly when so much of our society puts barriers in the way of people because of things about them like race, being a migrant to the country, age, many other reasons. In our work on the phone and online chat, we know that lots of people calling us are actually from India and other South Asian countries like Sri Lanka and Pakistan. They're often calling about financial abuse, economic abuse and family violence. So one of the reasons why today's topic is so relevant to the work that we're actually doing, supporting people every day. But lots of people are always calling about those issues as well. Often, sorry, I've lost my place. Most of the research about things like financial abuse and financial capability is done only with men and women, not other genders. But what we know from that is that women are typically actually great money managers. But they have few opportunities to practice financial skills beyond those day-to-day money skills. Also, they have very few opportunities to learn about and talk about money. This is why conversations like this one today can be really important and supportive. So Priya, I'm really glad to welcome you today. This has been a little while coming, and I know that we have had a great chat last time we spoke, and so I'm really looking forward to hearing from you today. Would you like to tell people a little bit about yourself and your work?
Yeah. And thanks, Lou. Yes, we did have a good chat, and money is a bit like that anyway. And I'm particularly glad to be speaking, at a session hosted by Wire, because I think you have been very innovative in starting off conversations of money and relationships. And what I learned from studying domestic economic abuse, particularly in the Anglo-Celtic and in the Indian communities in Australia, is that one of the learnings that came from it was not just the nature of domestic economic abuse, denying a woman money, appropriating assets, sabotaging work, but after they had survived all of this, and survived it also, with a lot of mental and physical ill health that accompanies family violence. One of the things they learned was that it is so important to talk about money and relationships. And you don't just talk about it before you join, you form a partnership. It's also across life stages, and how sometimes, even with the best of intentions, it works, and sometimes it doesn't.
Mm.
And when I heard that, I kind of thought, I kind of wondered whether I had done it, because I had also suffered economic abuse. And it took me a while to figure that, the stuff that I was suffering, gambling by my first husband, that was family violence. And, you kind of thought you suffered family violence, and you kind of wondered, how could it be that somebody who had been so independent and well-educated could suffer that? And, it leads to a lot of shame and embarrassment. And so sometimes it was really important, even for me when I was studying it, to kind of see myself better through their stories.
Mm.
That, when a woman said, oh, she even now, after so many years, she finds it hard to spend a lot of money on herself. And she has to tell herself, it's okay, it's okay. I kind of thought, yes, me too. And when she said, she thought she was losing her mind during this time. And I thought, yes, me too. You kind of see yourself in the stories. And that's why I think it's so important for us to hear each other. Not just how we succeeded in speaking about money, but how we either did not hear the other person or we were not heard. But not taking money for granted, that your experience is always replicated in the other person's experience. Not taking it for granted that the way you want to use money is going to be kind of innately by osmosis understood,
Yes.
And I think we've all asked some questions before marriage or a partnership, and we haven't thought of others because we thought, well, this is normal. This is the way it happens.
Mm.
And it doesn't.
No, that's just the way it is. Yeah. How did you come to working with economic abuse in your work?
Well, I was just reading Gillian Tett, the anthropologist who's now a financial journalist. And I've also been I'm also an anthropologist and have been a financial journalist. And she talks of the social silences. So I actually started studying money because I was studying banking. And, I see Lynn Richards is in the audience, and she was my supervisor at La Trobe. And I was studying banking because I'd been a financial journalist in Malaysia and in Melbourne. I was working with the BRW group. And I thought I'll do a fast PhD, I'd also written a couple of books on banking. And in the first one or two interviews, I kind of started asking people how they banked. And they started telling me how they managed money in marriage. And this was Anglo-Celtic, yeah. You always, an anthropologist studies a different tribe.
Yeah.
So I was brand new. And Lynn always said that I got people to talk about money because I was wearing a sari. But part of it was, I was a stranger. I was not going to bump into their uncle or their daughter or their, father-in-law. I wouldn't know it. So they were very nice to what they thought was a new person in their community. And they explained it to me. And so when I presented what I was getting, I said, it's all about banking. And Lynn said, no, it's all about money. And I didn't want to do money and marriage because my second marriage was also tottering. So what the heck did I know about Anglo-Celtic marriage? I wanted to do a fast PhD. Well, it sure became about money. So I've been studying money since the 1990, first in the Anglo-Celtic community, because you want to study somebody else. And then I've been studying remittances, money that migrants send home, because I also used to send money home. And I thought it was a natural phenomena. But studying the Anglo-Celtics, they don't send money home. They show care in a different way. So I was used to looking at money as a medium of care.
Mm.
And I must say, I was kind of on and on about it, that it's a moral act. It's a gift. It's the way you wrap money with care. Yeah, you say to your mother or your family, look, I still belong.
Mm.
I still care. And then I had this woman that I called Ekta in the book.
Mm.
And this was way back around 2010. And she started crying during the interview. Her marriage was bad.
Mm.
But then one of the things she told me was that she was the main earner. She'd come as a student and then a skilled migrant. And he was sending all the money he earned to his family at home, and then some of the money she earned without consultation to his family in India to build a luxurious home. It wasn't as if somebody was ill or anything. And this was just one aspect of the lack of care. And it still took me a long time to connect that with economic abuse. But in 2016, when the review came out, and I learned about economic abuse. And I said, this is economic abuse, that a medium of care. And it took me a long time to figure it out, that a medium of care, money is a medium of care without its morality, without looking after your family over here, can become economic abuse. So Ekta had to work at 3 jobs. And then I found out that the joint account, the Anglo-Celtic joint account, was the same thing. It was a medium of care. It was a symbol of marriage, of commitment, of togetherness. And time and again, the Anglo-Celtic women told me that the man had used the joint account for her money. He put his money separate and he stopped providing. But the joint account then became an easy way for him to appropriate the money.
Yeah. I think it's interesting the way that you said that it took you a long time to put those pieces together, because it seems to mirror how that's happened for our society in a way, that it's taken us a long time to understand how these things may be being used against people as well.
Yes, that's true. And it isn't as if you get it all in one go, Julie, you and I were talking just before we started that it takes us a long time to see that there's so much economic abuse in the process of separation and financial settlement. All this time you think, this is the way that divorces happen. But when the man, especially with economic abuse, when the woman doesn't have enough money, and the man then uses that to give less than what is enabled by law, but the woman just doesn't have the money to keep going to court and hiring counsel. And so she lands up either with less than half the house, and often, the superannuation, it's as if it doesn't come into that, no, we're not going to agree if you're going to touch my super. That's why I really think that, there has to be some kind of default, that super has to be equally divided unless you opt out.
Yeah, and I think that's something that lots of people, and maybe even people here, don't know, is that super is or can become a part of the property settlement, alongside many different parts of the asset pool, not just the house or the cash. And that there's a lot of things that can be included in that asset pool. And it's something that we certainly hear on the phones a lot. People going, oh, I can include that. Or I was told that I couldn't have this, but then I read on this website that I can, trying to work that out. And I think it's used often to harm people.
Yes, I think there's also a bit of emotional blackmail, you know. You want me to look after the children and do what I can for the children, well, then you better not insist on this. But I think it's a little bit as if super is future money, yeah? I think we don't even, when we are having conversations, say, especially when you have a child. And in a lot of my interviews, the woman said she wanted to look after the children. And but then they hadn't had the discussion of how you balance my money, our money, and your money. But they also hadn't had a discussion of how you balance present money and future money. And, you know, despite the fact that there are tax advantages in contributing to the super of the partner who's earning less. And then it strikes you, as we know, that it's older women who are the fastest growing cohort of homelessness. So before you give up your paid job and think that everything is going to work beautifully as in a fairy tale, think about the possibility that you might be homeless.
And I think unfortunately that lots of people do think about that. You know, my experience at Wire tells me that lots of the people who call us are very actively thinking, oh, what's going to happen? Am I going to have enough super? And being forced to make trade-offs. And sometimes it's through that separation process or you know, having information not freely shared, where they just go, it's better to give this up and give up the fight. And I mean, that's certainly one circumstance, but preferring to end the fight rather than kind of try and get what they're entitled to, because it's hard and scary and difficult.
Well, I think that's why, you know, we need to start talking about money. Parents have a lot to answer for. You really need to have open discussions of money with your children and to show what a respectful relationship is like. And so it allows you to think that you can talk about money. As one of the women in the story said, you know, with unconditional mutual regard. It doesn't always have to be something to do with power. And I think particularly with women, they can't have it both ways, you know. You can't sort of say the man should provide without you taking some responsibility. And so I know that in my family, partly because my mother had problems getting education and she had to get educated later on in life. We were 3 daughters. And so all of us, education was the prime thing, you know, not just education I found, because particularly with migration, you have a period of, you know, sometimes you have to start from scratch. And at least the young women in my life, I have always tried to persuade them not to stop paid work. You can, you know, tread water for a while, but keep your hand in. I've had to move jobs, you know, I started off as in academia in India. I went to Malaysia and my degrees weren't recognized. I became a journalist. And then I came here as a journalist. It took me 25 years to go back to academia. So, you know, you don't want to start from scratch all the time. You can change the balance a little bit and maybe suggest to your partner that he also change the balance a little bit. Because you see, wealth is not just in your home and in your super. Wealth is also in your career.
Yeah, absolutely. And the importance of that is really undermined often for women. You know, not being offered promotions because the expectation of that they'll have children and all those kinds of things, you know, it really devalues that importance of that career for women.
I just think we need to talk about it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
We can't just assume that, okay, you get married and he or she and you will think the same way about money, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe you won't. And particularly women, especially, you know, the gender of money changes across generations. And it happens in every community. It happens in the Anglo-Celtic community. It happens in migrant communities. In the Anglo-Celtic community, I heard over and over again in my doctoral work that, you know, the woman's mother had a passbook account, the father had a checkbook, you know, and there used to be an account at the corner store. Now, that was very different from the women themselves who were being interviewed, that they had paid work. And so, you know, housing changed, joint accounts changed. Joint accounts actually happened to women in the 60s. And it was partly because the banks wanted to be able to get both to the woman and to the man, you know, for housing, joint housing. But that has been a major change in the Anglo-Celtic community. And in the Indian community, a lot of women said to me that they looked at the mother and they thought that they wanted more responsibility over money than their mothers had or chose to have. So for women, the gender of money has changed more than for men. And if you are questioning the way you deal with money, you have to articulate this, how you grew up with money and what you hope to do with money, how you want to use money for your dreams of the future, and listen to what he or she wants to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a skill, isn't it? It's a skill that you need to build up and practice with time and more conversations and having those conversations again and over the years too.
Well, it's a skill, but it's also a recognition, Lou, that money is a medium of intimacy. If I think of who I speak to with money, I know if a friend and I are talking about money, we've become intimate, you know, like a good family. We know we'll be heard. We know we are there to hear them, yeah? And it's not with everybody you talk about money. So it's a medium of intimacy. And if you cannot talk about the person you live with money, you must question it. It's a red flag. Why would you want to live with a person with whom you cannot speak about money? I mean, it's such a medium of intimacy. I know that in my interviews, you know, as most likely you do it too. At the end of the interview, you always ask, is there any question that I haven't asked you? And I remember one man telling me, Supriya, you can ask me anything you like now. You know, he had talked to me about money for 1.5 hours.
Yeah.
And I had never met him before. And he said, you can ask me anything you like. It's because we had engaged in a respectful, safe, intimate conversation about money. So it's a medium of intimacy. It's not just a medium of power.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the way that you talk about it through these different frameworks of being an intimate, a medium of intimacy, a medium of care, and it fleshes out the idea of money, and it gives us these different ways, I think, of being able to imagine around money and think about how we can talk about it, how we can use it, how we can work with it, you know, and understand it. I think that's really powerful. when that intimacy gets abused, when that care gets abused, I guess that sort of starts leading to that economic abuse. How did you define economic abuse? How do you do that? How do you define that for your work?
Well, it's easily defined, not easily recognized. Yeah, the definition is there. It's appropriating money, denying money, sabotaging work, and this is not just a disagreement or something about what you'd want to do with money. Do I buy this curtain? Do I buy that carpet? Do we go on holiday? This is a kind of a malevolent pattern, and it's often gendered, most often men doing it to the women in their lives, that it's designed to take away human freedom and human rights. So it is designed, and you use isolation as a very major trigger. And that is why we've seen during COVID-19, the frequency and the incidence of family violence has increased. But it's also because it was kind of a no-brainer, it would, because women have become more financially vulnerable during COVID-19. They've lost more hours of work. They've put in more hours of care. They've taken out a greater percentage of their superannuation. And so so leaving, the options of leaving and support have become less. Yeah. And so family violence has increased. So this is as I said, not just a disagreement about how you use this little pocket of money, but it's actually designed to make you feel it's your fault. And the isolation means that you only see yourself through the eyes of the perpetrator. And then that's why in the stories, what I found, the women who survive best are the women who leave fast. 2 years, 3 years, 1 year, because the longer you stay, the more you question whether maybe, am I doing something wrong? Every woman nearly said, they use nearly the same words. I was walking on eggshells. I didn't quite know when the next bit would happen. You're constantly afraid. And it's not always physical assault. The physical assault does come with it. It's always emotional abuse. But you kind of, really you think that he's saying that it's because you're not a good wife, you don't know how to cook, you don't know how to manage money. And you think, am I going mad? And a lot of these women were professional work, in professional work before, and half of them were the main earners in their family. So this business that, it happened to them because they lacked financial literacy. No, we all need advice on money. But it was a design program to take away this woman's human rights, to take away her freedom of money. And by taking away the freedom of money, you take away the freedom of choice.
Yeah.
So once you start talking about money, not at the time of economic abuse, but you have a habit of talking about money, reflecting on money, you become aware that what's happening over here is not that you've spent $2 and papadum, whereas in the next suburb it's 150.
Yeah.
It is control.
Yeah, absolutely.
You want to be controlled, you don't want to be controlled, you better start planning to leave.
You said it's not a problem, there's a definition and then there's a recognition. I wonder.
It's a recognition.
Yeah.
It's a recognition of control, and then the ability to be able to leave, support from family and friends and from other providers. But very many women don't go to the providers. I mean, there's more talk. We didn't have the vocabulary before. Even I remember going to a Sikh temple, when I started this project. And I remember going there and asking the head priest, you know, the Granthi, I said, why aren't you doing something about it? These are men in your congregation who are abusing women. And the man said, oh, elder sister, you know what to do? You know, the women are becoming so modern, so Australian. And sort of I let it go. And then he says, you know, the man is coming, he's bowing before the holy book. And what happens behind closed doors? So they were still seeing it as something that happens behind closed doors, not a social issue, not what Victoria has termed the biggest law and order issue facing us today.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's changing. Hopefully it's changing. But this business of this is a so private issue. It's something that you have to deal with. You have to adjust to. It's not a private issue. It's a control issue.
And that's such a pervasive idea, isn't it? Like
yes.
Throughout.
As one of the women said, you know, do you want to pay the price of subservience for a relationship? You want to be subservient? Then go in eyes open. You don't want to be subservient? Well, then have your eyes open.
I wonder how you would, in terms of recognizing those behaviors to look out for, what that abuse might look like, what to be, when you're having those financial conversations, those early ones, what to be looking for. Do you have insight for us around what that could be?
Sure. You know, in a joint account, first you must, if you are going to have a joint account, then you must be also looking at what's coming in and going out, right? And I know one woman in migrant communities, you see, sometimes the migration regime itself becomes a medium of abuse. So one of the things that in Australia it happens is that in order to get permanent residence, you're supposed to show that this is a real relationship, yeah? And one of the ways in which you show it's a real relationship is it to do it the Anglo-Celtic way of having a joint account. Okay. Now, a joint account is actually, this joint account business is actually quite culturally distinctive. Most of the global south doesn't work like that. And so, you know, in India, you have a joint account. You don't have a joint account, so you have your account and then you have either or, you become a nominee. And a joint account is really for protection purposes, that if you suddenly drop dead, that money in the account goes to whoever it's joined with. So the man often says to the woman, you know, we better have a joint account. And so when he has a joint account, one woman she was a professional and she was not at work at that moment. And the man said, let's have a joint account. And she said, yes, let's go and ask the bank manager. So when they asked the bank manager, the manager said, oh yes, it's easy. We'll just make the husband's account a joint account. Well, he was really taken aback. He said, you mean you're going to make my account joint account? He had really hoped to open an account for his wife and make that a joint account. And so he immediately moved away from that. But with one woman where she agreed to have a joint account, the man kept his money separate. Her money went into a joint account. And then she asked him, you know, is my salary coming in? It doesn't seem to be, you know, maybe there's a mistake. He said, no, I've taken the money out. And she said, well, you know, why don't you leave me a little bit for me to spend? And he said, you mean you want to spend? So it's to see, is the joint account, is his money coming in? And, you know, is there money for the home and children and for discretionary expenditure? And then the other thing is to sabotage work, where the woman can get money of her own, to sabotage the work, to make sure that she's not able to, do the registration exams that will enable her to work as a professional. to make sure that she, you turn up at work or you use the technology so that she becomes a problem at work, sabotage work. And then it's appropriating assets. It's to see that, and this used to happen quite a lot in Australia. I remember talking to one woman where she said, she told her husband to go and register this property. And it was supposed to be joint, but he registered it only in his name. In India, it happens with remittances, you send money home. And it's to make sure, A, that it doesn't become part of the marital property. But B, you make assets somewhere else with only your name, Or in India, dowry is very much seen as a way of appropriating assets, not just what the woman has brought in her dowry, which is supposed to be technically and culturally her wealth, but also to feel that you're entitled to her family's wealth, So it's appropriating assets to take money from your account without your permission, to put your property in his name, and for coerced debt, to take a loan on her name for something that only you will be using. So that coerced debt is where, the financial counselors come in, because I think a lot of women don't know that now there are provisions where you can coerce debt can be negotiated. And you need somebody like a financial counselor to work for coerced debt, either with the utilities or for rental or with the banks. And so now, at least in Victoria, we have provisions. But coerced debt is very much like the old guarantees, Lou. In the old days of consumer finance, we used to call it sexually transmitted debt. So.
Yeah, and it's a huge issue. Again, another one that we hear about fairly often. And it's interesting, the things that were jumping out to me when you were describing those things to look out for were like different sets of rules for the two people. His money doesn't go in the joint account, but hers does. He can spend, but she can't. And I think that's such a common feature that we see.
I think, Lou, across cultures, different kinds of red flags. I think really all the Indian stories, there has been the mother-in-law saying, I'll keep your jewelry safe, in a bank locker, and the woman never seeing it again. Or the man leaving the house even when the police have come and have told him to leave the house. He leaves the house, but he takes her jewelry away. Now, jewelry, at least in India, is very emotionally bound because it goes down the female line. The mother, the grandmother gives her daughter, granddaughter, ancestral jewelry. There's a lot of emotion attached to it. Of course, there's a lot of material buffer that it was supposed to be in the old days, that you can sell it, but it's now more emotional. And so I'm not saying that every mother-in-law who keeps the jewelry, it leads to economic abuse, but nearly every economic abuse case involves jewelry in the Indian case. So if I was there, I heard some woman telling me that her mother-in-law has kept the jewelry, I'd have a red flag. I'll listen a bit more closely to the story. And I don't know the red flags in a lot of other cultures. What is a red flag in a Sudanese culture? What is the red flag, in South Asia, most likely jewelry is. But what is the red flag in Nigeria? What is the red flag in a Latin American culture? So we have to at least be open to hearing the woman's story and asking. And that's what happens now. I remember, and I know Rachna is in the audience, and she's from SECL, the Southeast Community Links. And remember we discussing, and I asked, does anybody come to you saying they've suffered family violence or economic abuse? And, they told me that no, they come because they want emergency funds, or they come because they want, help with housing, or they want to get work. And as a professional who listened to the story, turns out that there's much more behind this emergency fund, that else there is some kind of family violence happening, some kind of economic abuse happening. And you allow a woman to tell her story in her own words, and you
Yeah.
hear more than you have asked for. So
Almost always. We only have a few more minutes before we're going to have a break, but I think maybe we'll take 5 extra minutes to talk, because we still have, I know we've talked a lot, but I have a couple more questions I want to get to. So we might take the break at 2:25 and then we'll come back at 2:30. I did want to ask you, it struck me when I was reading that so many of the people you interviewed didn't know what family violence and economic abuse were. Did you expect that when you set out with these interviews?
Yes, I did. I didn't recognize it myself.
Yeah.
It's only when I read the review that I thought, oh my God, I thought gambling was just addiction and financial responsibility.
Yeah.
I mean, I did leave the marriage, but I didn't leave it because I recognized economic abuse. I left it because I thought it was losing. And again, this losing your mind keeps coming up. Family violence is the single largest predictor of mental and physical ill health for women between 18 and 60 or something like that. And so, yes. So I didn't ask them, have you suffered economic abuse? I just said, tell me.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I said, tell me. And of course, our sample was people who had survived family violence. Yeah. They understood family violence, but they didn't all suffer physical assault. And some women recognized it only after the man had died. One woman I called Betty, and I think you might remember the story. She, after the man died, and she was helping transcribe a seminar. And they said, how many kinds of family violence? And then they said economic abuse, and this is what happens. And she burst into tears and she left. And then the woman, the facilitator came out afterwards and said, what happened? And she said, oh my God, I suffered family violence. I suffered economic abuse. And all my life he had been telling me, you're obsessive about money. You're paranoid. And she thought, there's something wrong with her. And another woman, after again the husband had died, a friend told her, you've suffered family violence, you've suffered economic abuse. And it took her a while to figure out that a person like me could have suffered family violence.
Yeah.
So no, economic abuse is difficult to recognize, but it's also because we don't necessarily want to think it's happening to us.
Of course not. No one wants that to be happening.
Yes, but you're used to being independent. You think you kind of well insured, as it were, with your education and your profession. I mean, 6 of the 12 women whose stories I tell, they were the main earners.
Yeah. And I think
this is not because something is lacking in a woman that she suffers economic abuse.
No, it's never that, is it? I'm finding it really interesting that you keep bringing up that sense of losing your mind, second guessing, feeling like you're going crazy, and how that's so a part of that emotional abuse that comes hand in hand with economic abuse and the gaslighting.
That's right. It's isolating you know. I mean, sometimes the man goes in a very determined way to isolate you from your family and friends. And unfortunately, migration does it for him, just like COVID-19 is doing it for him.
Yeah.
You know, with migration, you are alone. You don't have friends around you. You don't know the culture. You don't know the support systems. And if you don't go to work, paid work, you know, you don't have an extra group. And I kept asking the women, don't you go, you went to the temple? Didn't you ask anybody? Didn't you tell anybody? And they said, my God, they tell me, are you going mad or what? Such a nice man.
Yeah, absolutely. You also talked a lot about the morality of money and how that comes into this. Could you tell us a little bit more about it, how that relates to money and relationships?
That's right. You know, in the Anglo-Celtic group, when I was studying marriage and money, women told me about how important the joint account was for them. Yeah. And it was a ritual. Like you get married, and some women said they still had their marriage certificate tied in ribbon. Yeah. And they take their marriage certificate to the bank and convert their accounts to joint accounts. It was a way of showing to themselves and to others that they are a couple. And it's still true. You know, in de facto marriage, you might have a joint account, but your main accounts are separate. And in marriage, you might have separate accounts, but your main account is joint. It's a mirror image. So in Australia, a joint account kind of symbolizes that you are married, right? But together with that, you know, it's a common part. Together, they'd say. Together, we join. It's a partnership. They wouldn't use the word equality much because, of course, you weren't financially equal, right, in the first few years of marriage. And it was also a way of not dwelling on how much he earns and how much you don't earn. Yeah. It was together, common part. So then when a man uses the joint account as a means of not providing, then that whole business of together, the jointness, that falls apart.
Yeah.
The morality of money in marriage lies in this jointness. That means that you provide together for your home and children and for each other's dreams and interests. Yeah. But when it becomes, and it happens at the time you need it most, just when the woman has given up paid work and has children, the man stops providing. You know that terrible story of Karen in the book, when she said that when she took her children to the town and she told them to go to the toilet in the town to save money on the water bill.
Yeah.
I kind of thought, you know, and she said she had lost weight and she'd lost nearly 10 kilos, 10, 15 kilos because she always put herself last. There wasn't enough food on the table.
Yeah.
That is lack of morality. Yeah. And the same thing, as I said to you earlier, it happened to me. I always thought sending money home was a moral act. But there is another morality of looking after your wife and children, looking after the family.
Yeah.
And you push your woman to work 3 jobs and do without. That is immoral.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. Let's break now